Phil,
Okay,
done and dusted.
thanks very much.
That's all right.
It's always exciting getting a film back and hoping that at least one or two good shots. Anyway, let me show you how all this came about. Most camera repair shops these days won't even look at these old cameras, but I managed to track down one in Ultimo, Sydney, that seemed passionate about them. They'll even repair dead exposure meters. This camera just needed shutter adjustment. You can actually do a rough check of the shutter using a kitchen clock. Just set it to 1 second. And here we go. If it's accurate on 1 second, chances are it'll be accurate on the others. One of the things I like about these old cameras is that you can set the ISO manually. Later on, I bought one of these, which read the code off the film. Here we go. Okay, it's sort of a barcode, and it set the ISO automatically, which was a nuisance because you couldn't change the ISO for experimenting with push-pull processing. Okay, we'll load up. Now I slot the second sprocket hole under the clip. Wind it on. Then I check that the film is not loose in the cassette. Wind it back till there's some tension. Close it up. And then I watch this spool here to make sure it's turning, and as you can see, it's turning. And the shutter on these cameras is beautifully smooth, and it's part of the secret why I was able to get away with ridiculously long exposures as illustrated in my Kodachrome film. Here we go. Yeah, nice. Okay, and it's on frame one. Oh, no, I've got to wind it on another frame. Okay, now it's on frame one, we're right to go. I took this shot under daylight temperature lighting to test the accuracy of colour of this new roll of Portra. It's reasonably accurate, I think. The timber wall looks natural. However, outdoors it had a green cast. The results were hardly better than the expired Portra I featured in the previous video. I had to correct pretty well all outdoor shots, and I wondered if the scanner was at fault. So to check this, I scanned an old Kodak Gold negative. It had a bit of green bias too. Yet when I scanned this old Kodachrome transparency, it came up good with no need of correction. The film was fast enough in this early shot of Mount Barney to not have to go below half a second shutter speed, thus avoiding elongation of the moon. With the meter averaging the exposure here, there's the risk of blowing out the subject, who is in the only patch of sunlight. But the film handles it. It's surprising how dim the light becomes when you're deep among dark rock walls. With 160 ISO, I barely got away with a handheld shot here. One of the things I like about this camera is the fact that it can wear its robust leather case all the time, and it protects it from bumps and scratches. And if you want to take a photo, you just flip the hood over. There's only 3 things to adjust: shutter, aperture and focus, and you're right to go. And get your shot, just put it back, and away we go. I reckon It's the best camera for bushwalking. This is on Mount Maroon, and I'm very concerned about the fact that the exposure darkens from left to right of frame. I would have been using a 500th of a second, so the shutter spring has to drag both curtains across together. Weakened with age, it might be struggling to build up to speed. I'm hoping that can be fixed. Have you ever tried to take a picture of yourself using the timer release and the landscape comes out in focus but you're not? When I got my first digital camera, there was no way I could get myself in focus, except if I propped a stick up to represent me and then set the camera going, race over, throw the stick away and pose in its place. That's the only way I could get it. But these cameras, all I've got to do is measure the distance, and I can see it's only 2.5 meters. So you set the distance here, and then you, oh, I forgot to, that's all right. And you set it going and race down. And make your pose. Oh, just in time. Just in time. I was distracted. It's hard to resist taking a photo of a well-restored vintage machine, but with fixed focal length prime and crowds of people, it's hard to get back far enough to fit it all in. Action shots on a 60th of a second involve a lot of hit and miss. I'd like the rider to be a bit sharper, but I only had one go at it. This digital shot shows what you can achieve with multiple attempts during a weekend event. Doing time exposures of the star trails is really easy with these cameras. You just set your shutter to B, have a cable release, set it on infinity, take a wild guess at what aperture. With 25 ISO, which I used to shoot at, I used to just put it on f4. But I'm using 160 here, so I've got no idea. I've just put it on 5.6. I'll open my shutter, go away and watch TV or have a sleep and set the alarm for 3 hours and come back, and I should have something. Okay, we'll need lights out. And here we go. And it wasn't a success for two reasons. Firstly, the humid atmosphere fogged the lens. Secondly, I had to wait too long for the moon to set, and meanwhile the Milky Way rotated mostly out of view. This is how it would look on a better night, taken with the Bronica 6x7 using expired Portra 400. When I bought the Sony mirrorless camera, and I'm using that to film this, I thought it was an absolute bonus that with a simple adapter I could use my old Minolta lenses. However, there's a mechanical disconnect between the two concepts. With the Minolta, the aperture is always on maximum, so that you get a nice bright image, shallow depth of field for focusing. Then you pre-select the aperture according to the meter, and when you take a shot, it momentarily stops down. And with the Sony, and you can imagine this is the Sony, you have to manually open it up while you focus, and then carefully stop it down to the correct aperture before you take your shot, and hope that your subject is still there. Nevertheless, I managed to get 2 shots using the 135 lens fitted to the Sony. It performed beautifully, despite the fact that it had a small patch of mould on one of the internal elements. So, what have I learnt from this exercise? Well, I've discovered that I need to regain the habit of winding the film on for each shot. And I think I need to find a more optimal film for outdoors. Advantages. With the Sony A7, I can choose to shoot in manual mode, but it's not as simple and quick as a true manual. Digital cameras can, of course, do heaps of things these can't, but both have their place. These cameras will keep working in all sorts of weather. They're heavy, but if you're planning to spend several days in the wilderness, you don't have to carry a whole bunch of batteries. And that's about all, really. Thanks for watching.